I know myself, and that is not something that I value today. Like, I just don't care. What I
Right,
care about is kindness, right? I care
right.
about kindness. I care about how the person treats other people.
Yeah.
And so that's me and that's my mom, right? That's me and that's my grandpa. He's over there. Like, I'm a separate person. I am my own person. And this is how I want to live my life. These are my boundaries. Like, these are my needs. These are my non-negotiables. Developing, kind of like just really knowing who you are inside and out.
Welcome to Amy Liz Harrison's podcast, Eternally Amy, a mum of eight's journey from jail to joy, a Gen Xer who overcame her struggle with alcohol to become a best-selling author and mental health advocate. She shares stories of hope and offers ideas for others struggling with mental health challenges. One thing is for sure, you'll leave with something to chew on. And now, here's your host, Amy Liz Harrison.
Greetings, compadres. This is a special day, y'all, because we have an incredible guest today. So much so that I'm going to skip the mystery meat sandwich quote that we usually do at the beginning of the podcast, because there's just so much to unpack here. We're going to need the time, right? And you will be so blessed by Yulia, my friend Yulia, and she has started an incredible business. And I just want to so warmly and so passionately welcome Yulia today. And I love that she's here. And I would say you know what, if you're not driving right now, if you're listening to this and you have the ability to take notes, take some notes. We'll get the transcript going and all of that. You'll be able to reconnect and find her later and schedule some coaching sessions or whatever you need. But I'm going to just launch right into the chaplain's chat and have Yulia just take the floor, and she's going to tell us about how she arrived at this fantastic work that she's doing. Welcome, Yulia.
Oh my gosh, Amy, thank you so much for having me. I am really honored to be here, and I absolutely love you and the message that you share with your audience. So yeah, my name is Yulia, and I'm glad that we're friends. I really appreciate your friendship in on this journey, or this recovery journey. But I guess what am I doing here? It's been a pretty crazy past few years. And I guess I'll just take a step back and share that I've been in recovery for coming up on 6 years in June. And
Congrats.
thank you, it has been quite a road and a journey. But I started a coaching business, so working with women in recovery and really helping them, change some of their some maybe toxic patterns that are going on in relationships. They might be struggling because it could be really painful, especially when we keep getting the same results, where we're falling into these weird, patterns of behavior or situationships with people that are just not good for us. And it's baffling, and it's like, what is going on here? We all want, that love, that healthy love, but somehow it just, there's just this stuff that keeps coming up, that, it's like the same repetitive pattern. So anyway, that's kind of what happened to me. I got sober in June of 2017. And, I started, the 12-step program in AA. And I was, again, was given gifted the gift of desperation. And I was very, very focused on my recovery. I knew that it was life or death for me. And so I really focused and just dove right in, both feet in right away. And I followed the suggestions. There's a lot of suggestions. There's not, you don't have to do anything really, but I wanted to succeed. I wanted a different life. So one of the suggestions that I followed was don't get involved in romantic relationships. Don't date in the first year of recovery. And I was so gung-ho, that being the overachiever that I was, I thought, I took a year and a half off. So I thought, okay, I'm going to get some extra credit points there. I'm going to be set up for success. And so after that year and a half, what happened was I definitely fell into a situationship, and without going into too many detail, it was a complete train wreck. I honestly don't even know what happened. It was just all of the things that I didn't want in a partner, this person had, and I didn't know why. It was someone that, I was working with, so it was a colleague at work. It was just all the things that I used to laugh at and, judge other people for when I would hear people dating, within the workplace. I'd say, gosh, that's crazy. Who would do that? So at 1.5 years sober, that was me. And so that was, that just totally blew up in my face, right? And so then I took some time for myself. Maybe it was like 6 months or so. And, I guess I was 3 years sober. And then I thought, okay, I started to feel kind of lonely and, gosh, am I going to die forever alone? And okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and put myself out there. So I, kind of just started to put myself out there. And, I really just had this mindset of like, gosh, I don't want to end up alone. So I was just taking like a really different approach. And that was like, I had to convince the other person why they should pick me. Like, here, I'm going to tell you all the things why I'm so great. As long as you pick me, please pick me. And it was just like, and I ended up in this like awful in train wreck number 2. And so, it was just, and I'm, and when I take a step back, when I was taking a step back, I'm just like, what is happening? I took a year and a half off. I took another 6 months off, and at 3 years, I'm in a worse relationship than when I was, when I was drinking. Like, this is awful. It was humiliating. It felt really alienating for me because I was so embarrassed. Like, what am I doing? And so that kind of set me out on a journey to just like find some answers. Like, what is going on here? This is not what I want for myself. Like, this is not the person that I want to be with. How did this happen? And I found myself at a 2-day seminar, and it was a Gottman Method 7 Principles Leader seminar. And so super high level overview of the Gottman Method. It's actually a form of couples therapy. The Gottmans, John Gottman, he actually has a love lab out of UW Washington where they have been studying couples in longitudinal research studies. So like 40 years of research, where basically they would have a couple move into this love lab. It's like a little apartment setup. They stay there for a weekend. They just chill out, do whatever. And there's cameras everywhere. And basically they're filming them just interact with each other, and they're taking their like blood and urine samples, and they're measuring kind of like, everything. And so they're watching them interact with each other. So the bottom line from that was that they clearly saw that there was some distinction between couples who were masters at relationships and then couples who were disasters at relationships. And out of that came these like 7 principles that are key in healthy relationships. It was a focus on marriage, but really it's like in all relationships, right? And then there were these 4 horsemen that were present in couples who were, very likely for, heading for divorce. And John Gottman could predict whether a couple would divorce with 90% accuracy. And so as a single woman who was struggling with relationships, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm not in a marriage. I'm not anywhere close to being married, but the 7 principles for making relationships work and the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse that they said were present in those disaster relationships was what I was seeing in my previous relationship, all of them. So that really shed light on like, okay, gosh, all of these different kind of like character traits, like, how did I pick this person? This doesn't align with my values. It doesn't align with who I am. And also, how do you fix these things that were coming up, like criticism, content, defensiveness, stonewalling? All of that stuff was just on repeat in my life. And what I learned was that there were antidotes to that. And so what I learned from going through that seminar and then going through 2 more trainings, level 1 and level 2, was what healthy relationships look like and what exactly it took to be in one, and healthy communication skills and conflict management. And so I learned a ton, and I went further and got certified as a relationship coach and a life coach, and just started applying those to my dating life. And, today, fast forward 2 years, I'm in a very healthy and thriving relationship of my dreams with the perfect man for me. And I want to give pretty much almost all credit to me discovering this, the Gottman Method, because it really changed my perspective and it allowed me to work on me because I had unresolved issues myself. So, so it wasn't just, me pointing a finger, like I had a part in it too. So without going off, on and on and on and on this tangent, I'm just going to pause right here and just kind of say, healthy relationships are absolutely possible for everyone. Everyone deserves that love where they feel safe physically and emotionally. And it's a matter of just, increasing that self-awareness and just learning some skills. We can absolutely break those patterns that are existing and plaguing us. And so what I learned through being in AA and the 12-step program is to ask for help and get some help and guidance when we're just not getting the results that we need and keep running into the same issues.
Okay, already? I don't even know if you're done talking. I'm like blown away. I have 10,000 questions, but on the ask for help, like, yeah, huge, huge. Because I love how you talked about too, I mean, it's not like a healthy relationship or a partner's going to fall into your life like from the sky. You know what I mean? So you do kind of, I would think, have to take a few active steps to, kind of get out there and, believe that it's possible, I would think.
For sure. Yeah. And one of the things that I did differently when I took a step back and did this work in myself was that my goal was to just get that validation and to just fill that void. And when I shifted from, chasing, right? Like me, to, being essentially committed to commitment, things really, really took a different turn in the way that I assessed people when I met them, in the questions that I asked. I was no longer like convincing them why they should choose me. I was actually, getting to know them and really understanding, like, is this a fit for me in my life? Does this align with my values? Does this align with the future that I have envisioned for myself? But I had to take a step back and do that work to have that clarity, because the problem that I had initially was that I just didn't know what I was doing. I was lonely, and so I wanted to be with someone, and that's all I knew, right? So and that's just that approach, set me up for failure.
And I apologize ahead of time if I am a little bit scattered in asking you some questions. It might be a little bit ping-pongy, but that's because you've just like fired my brain off, which I love so much. What kind of questions were you asking these dudes that, helped you to gather enough information? Because here's the thing, right? You were at a point in your life and in your recovery probably where you were like, you knew your worth and your value, and you knew probably if you wanted to be legitimately happy, it's not like, hey, what's your favorite color? What kind of movies do you like? You know what I mean? And so I love that you asked specific things that would get you more to understand who that person really was and if you guys were aligned. So I'm just wondering what kind of questions you would ask them.
Yeah, so it's actually kind of there's two different sides to it, right? First of all, yes, it's the questions, but also it's a specific personality type. And really, what I learned, again, through just educating myself, is that what I should be looking for if I want, again, that committed relationship that's going to go last the test of time, is I really should be looking for a specific personality type. And that is kind of what's called someone that has like high relationship aptitude. Alan Finkel, he's actually a social psychologist, coined that term. And essentially, it is someone that has a high level of emotional intelligence and can securely attach to others. So they've got a secure attachment style, and really someone that has an agreeable character. So an opposite of that would be maybe someone that is kind of always like judging and questioning. Someone has like that has like a high level of neuroticism, and so essentially kind of like looking at the personality from that angle. And then also the questions that I was asking were kind of taken out of my personal exercise that I did, which is a core values exercise. And it might sound kind of like, well, okay, sure, core values exercise, boring. But you know what that did for me, and I kind of did it myself. I basically got a list of like 200 different core values. And it took me probably a week to narrow it down to like 10. And so those were basically like, you know, intrinsic to who I am, extremely important. You know, when I look for someone, it is, you know, detrimental and non-negotiable for me to share those values with them. So a lot of my questions were, for example, around, you know, like just kindness, and like asking them about how they relate to others and what relationships they have. And maybe someone that, you know, someone that has a track record of having healthy, long-lasting relationships. For example, there was one time when I went on a coffee date with this guy, and I asked him, you know, tell me about your best friend. And he said he didn't have any friends at all. And, you know, and I'm not coming from a place of being judgy whatsoever,
Right.
because you know what? I am a recovering lone wolf. So I, like, full disclosure, like I have operated out of that lone wolfness where I don't need anybody, you know, me, myself, and I don't care about you. And I don't live my life like that anymore. And so for me, it's really important that they have people in their life that they connect with and care about. And so when I got that answer, for me, it was like, that's, you know, what is that going to look like when we're, you know, when we're living together? Like, are you going to focus all your attention on me because you don't have anybody else in your life, right? And what does that tell you about their person if they have absolutely no friends? You know, it obviously, like, it hurts my heart to hear that. But then hearing and then probing, right, a follow-up question to that is, well, why is it that way? You know, like, what is it about people that, you know, that makes you kind of keep your distance? And the answers that I got were not in alignment with my values at all, because it reminded me of how I used to be, and I don't live like that, live my life like that anymore. So it was a very clear point that, you know, I was not going to move forward on for a second date with that person.
I love that. And I love the probing questions, because I think sometimes, you know, we'll kind of hear a piece of information just in communication in general, and we'll wonder why, or we'll wonder what's underneath that. What is the root of that, right? And
Exactly.
so I love that, is just, you know, honoring yourself really with being able to go, tell me more. You know,
Yeah,
tell me
a
about that.
place of
Yeah.
curiosity, right? You know,
Yes.
and because when we go below the surface, guess what? That is what an emotional connection is.
Yeah.
When we go below the surface, below just what did you eat for breakfast, or, oh, you know, you like soccer, I like soccer. Well, none of that really matters when you're in a relationship with someone. What really matters is, are they going to be there for you? Can you trust them physically and emotionally? And in order to find out this information, we have to go deeper. And that is one of the pitfalls of singles today. A lot of the times is that they're convincing, you know, why they should be chosen, instead of probing and really doing that research, like getting into that person's inner world to really better understand them, right? Seek to understand, so that we can make you know, a decision for ourselves whether we should invest our time, you know, our emotions in moving forward. Because, you know, it takes time to get over a relationship, especially a bad one. So if we could do anything that we can on the preventative side, right, so we don't even go that route, it puts us closer towards that right person and moves that wrong person away, right? They're just not right for us. I'm sure they're right for somebody else, but not for me.
I love it. I mean, I'm picturing even how do you do this? And what I mean is, Are people generally receptive? And I guess the answer is like, well, if they're not, then they're kind of not for me. If you like are to the point where you've got a bunch of just get to know you type questions. I love that you asked, you boiled it down to 10 core values that you wanted to know
Yeah.
about. Were people receptive to that? I'm just wondering at the like onset of your relationship, how you found people who were willing to talk about it.
Well, again, it is all about the questions that we ask. So it's not, it's not like a drill sergeant interview. It's like you have to become skillful in asking questions, right?
Right,
And
right.
not sound like you're a detective interrogating them. So what I use is kind of like an acronym called TED. And what that stands for is T is for tell, E is for explain, and D is for describe. And all of these basically allow the other person to not give you like a yes or no answer. It allows them to tell a story, explain a situation, describe what they were feeling, right? So when you're using that in your conversations, it creates for a very natural and flowing conversation between two people. And so it allows you to go deeper without kind of sounding like you're some kind of a robot interrogating them. But it is, I believe that it is really important to just prepare and plan. So it's really helpful to kind of know like, well, what are the questions that I would need to ask in order for me to find out blank, right? If because money, right? Like let's talk about money. That is one of the more common conflict issues with couples, and one of the kind of leading issues why divorce happens, right? And like, why is that? Well, I don't know the statistic behind it, but like chances are it's a dicey kind of like uncomfortable topic. So people just don't really talk about it. They just kind of sweep it under the rug, and then they wait until after they're married to talk about finances, and that's
Too
when
late.
issues arise, right? And
Yep.
now it's like you got some major problems. You're finding out about all the debt. You're finding out about what kind of values they have around money, and you're stuck. You're not just
Yeah.
stuck, you're stuck. So it's like, you kind of you weave those into the conversation. Obviously, you probably don't ask it on the first date, right? But you can kind of tell, by someone's habits, like just, it's really simple stuff. Like if you see that they've got a lot of shiny toys, or maybe they tell you, I'm $100,000 in debt, but it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. It's
It's
like,
fine.
oh, okay, well, thank you. Like that's information, right? I'm not going to
Yeah,
sit there and teach them because, that's their life. But
sure.
it's like, oh, is that going to work for me? Am I going to be
Right.
okay with combining my life with someone that is more focused on the shiny things rather than paying off the debt?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So fantastic. I mean, I sort of feel like, gosh, I mean, it's almost a little bit more intellectual in a way, because really, especially if you are interested in getting sort of a longer term relationship or
Mhm.
being involved in one, it does make sense that it's more of an intellectual exercise. I hear crazy stories from single people like, these days you can't go out to dinner with somebody anymore because, all they want to do is meet for drinks. And then
Mhm.
especially because a lot of people I know don't drink, right? So they're like, okay, how about coffee? And then it's like 10 minutes and the person is out the door saying goodbye and, on to the next one. And it just seems
Yeah,
like, wow, just really hard to sort of, you kind of have to vet people, I would think. I mean, that's probably the wrong term, but
100%. Actually, it's the right term. And actually, you said it earlier, it's an intellectual kind of process. I want to take a hot second and just recommend a book that is pretty much life-changing for anyone that is thinking about getting out there, whatever stage you're in. It's called Intellectual Foreplay.
mm,
And it is an absolute game changer. It completely shifted my perspective on how to approach getting to know somebody. It is a wonderful book, and there's an Audible version out there, obviously. And so for anyone that is kind of struggling with like, oh gosh, am I going to make the same mistakes again? There's just a wealth of really amazing content that makes you think, gives you examples of what questions to ask, and I highly recommend it. It was a complete game changer for me. I have listened to that book on Audible many times. I've gone back to it, and it's just a really great tool to use, especially if you're super early on or just feeling nervous about getting out there and making the same mistakes.
I love that. That's incredible. I feel like I want to read that.
Yeah.
Earlier, when you were talking about the Gottman study, that was fascinating to me, the whole, apartment and recording the couples and
Yes.
all of that. And you mentioned the 7 principles. Can
Yes.
you give me a general idea of what those are, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So they're really based around like what creates healthy and thriving relationships, right? And so the first principle is it's called enhance your love maps. And that is just really all about like knowing the inner world of your partner. Like how well do you really know them? Again, it just goes back to the questions that we ask. The quality of our life is dependent on the questions that we ask. I truly believe that, because when we don't know things about our partner or just about friends in general, then a lot of the things that they might be saying or doing, they don't make sense, and it feels like an attack on us because we don't understand. So that first principle is just really going deep below the surface and asking, not non-surface level questions, but like, tell me, where does that come from? Or what was it like for you, growing up? Or like, what kind of relationship models did you see, for example? And then the second one is it's called nurture your fondness and admiration. So like just being loving towards the other person and giving them like your undivided attention. I would even go to say like love languages. It helps to know your partner's love language, because it's not about speaking your love language to them, it's about you speaking their love language to them, right? And then the other is turning towards each other instead of away. So like Gottman likes to use this example of, a couple, they're sitting on the couch and, the woman goes, oh, look at that beautiful, bird outside. And then they zoom in on the guy and he's just sitting there watching TV and he's ignoring her, right? And so the likelihood of her to rebid for that, attention is like pretty low because she was rejected. And so really catching every one of those bids to connect and say, what he ideally would say is like, oh yeah, I see that. That's a really pretty bird, right? Like that's him responding to that bid. Allowing your partner to influence you, so not digging in your heels and allowing them to, just let them have their way, right? My way may not be the right way. Is it about running right? Probably not.
Yeah.
It's creating like an equal partnership. And then there's quite a few more, but also conflict, right? Conflict is a big one, how we deal with it. And with the Gottman method, it's about managing conflict and knowing which are solvable problems and which are perpetual problems. 69% of all problems in couple relationships are perpetual, so they will never be solved. So then what do? We learn how to have dialogue around them, healthy dialogue, so that we're not, again, like trying to dig in our heels and attack the other person. It's never going to go away. And how can you be okay with that? But solve what you can solve. So yeah. So, and then the other one is creating like a shared meaning. So like just really creating like, like rituals of connection. Do you have like a morning routine where you have coffee together and you chat, just building that intimacy and friendship, because at the core of those healthy relationships is that like, emotional connection is built on, positive interactions and just showing that love and really going above and beyond for that person to love them and understand them.
So important. The rituals of connection. I love it. And I'm big on rituals.
Yes.
And the whole concept of solve what you can solve. I mean, right? So key, because, we think we control things, but, sometimes that's a misnomer, right? And I think that's so good. And I love the idea of just realizing what a big deal conflict really is, because I don't know, I think that one of the patterns that at least I see in my marriage is like, we don't have very many conflicts, but there are some things that we've had to work really hard to like, oh, I recognize this. Let's quit this dance right here, because that's all it
Yep.
is. This is just on repeat, and this is not even about what we're currently thinking it's about. It's not. It's about this other issue, you know? And so
Definitely.
I was wondering, on the heels of the conflict part, what are some toxic behaviors that people want to look out for? And I get that kind of some of these things might be a little bit personally tailored to different people, but also
Yeah.
kind of what are the deal breakers?
Well, so here's what I used. And actually, can I just take a quick step back to what we were discussing earlier? So I work with quite a few married women, and what I hear a lot of the times is, we kind of fall into these patterns of like, we're the victim and they're the perpetrator. And or especially in working through like an issue, it's like you're the issue because you have the issue with this thing. And so the approach that I, kind of coach my clients on is like, he's not the issue, you're not the issue, the issue is the issue, and you two are against the issue. So like you're a team against the issue, whatever that may be.
Yes.
um, Not you're the problem or I'm the problem, right? So switching gears, so again, when I learned about the four horsemen, again, criticism, right? It's like verbally attacking someone's personality or character. Content, so kind of like attaching sense of self with the intent to insult or abuse. So content can be like rolling your eyes. It can be like harsh sarcasm. Defensiveness, so when you're feeling like you're being attacked, then you become defensive and, well, I didn't do it and you're being mean to me, and or well, look at you, you're not the angel, blah blah blah. And then stonewalling, that kind of happens in conflict situations where you just shut down and you're just ignoring whatever that person's doing, you're just staring at a wall. Those conflict, or just like, it could happen at any time, even if you're on a date with someone, right? And the waiter is taking too long. It's like, how are they responding to that? Like, how are they responding to a stressful situation? Are they berating them? Are they calling them names? Are they losing their cool, like their temper easily? That would be a red flag. An inability to control their emotions, because that potentially could mean that they could, fly off the handle with you. Controlling or manipulating tendencies that are especially coming up like early on, where especially when someone kind of makes you feel bad about yourself and you're just like, oh God, I feel so guilty and I don't really know why I feel guilty. That is like, but more than likely there's like some kind of a manipulation tactic going on because they're feeling insecure about something. And then of course, like, it could be, again, talking about like emotional safety and physical safety. Like if you get into a car with someone, right, and they're texting a novel to a friend while they're driving with you going 70 miles an hour, that is a physical safety issue. And so that would be a red flag, because that is a disregard for your life. So yeah, things like that would definitely be red flags. And of course, if you're having conversations with someone and they're just very interested in talking about themselves, and they haven't asked you much about yourself ever, and so all you're doing is just listening while your ears are melting off because there's just so much to learn about them, but no questions are being asked about you. And maybe if they are, it's like super surface level. That generally tells me that they don't really want to get to know me, and they probably don't care much.
Yeah. And I think probably once you experience a few of these, you probably get pretty good at like, oh yeah, so no, and
Yeah.
maybe, and
Yeah. And also, of course, and last but not least, to kind of wrap it all up, if you're finding yourself making excuses for someone's bad behavior, that is a red flag in and of itself, because that is, to me, that is a sign that you might not have a clear understanding of what your boundaries are or where they are, and you're looking to fix them or you're looking at their potential down the road, but the reality is right in front of you right now. So to any of the ladies out there that find themselves, making those excuses for bad behaviors that we just kind of listed, that would definitely be an indication that some deep inner work needs to happen before you put yourself out there. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to share.
I love it. I mean, this is fantastic and applicable to like everybody. I mean, I
Yes.
even am hearing things that you share that are applicable to my friendships,
Absolutely.
You
Yes.
get kind of in that place where you can see this just kind of working in so many different situations. Because
Yeah.
ultimately, you kind of have to decide what you're going to tolerate and what's kind of not as big of a deal, knowing that like nobody's perfect. But
Yeah.
I'm even thinking about, people who are chronically late, right? Some people legitimately don't mind that because they're like, oh, it created space in my day and it's fine. I got a chance to,
Yeah.
do something else while I was waiting for you or whatever. And other
Mhm.
people see that as a sign of like real disrespect.
Oh my gosh. I am so glad that you brought this one up. I'm really happy that you brought this one up because it's really interesting because again, kind of going back to our questioning ability and skill set. So the lateness part, I used to be very black and white. Like if you're late, you're disrespecting me, you don't care about me, on and on and on and on. And so, kind of like a part of empathy also is just like what's going on, like is there something that like I need to know about? Because here's the thing, people that have ADHD, let me tell you,
Yeah.
it's a thing.
Yep.
And unless they're very diligent about managing their medication and getting help for that, they're that late friend. And it's not because they don't care, it's because they've got a disorder. And same with like maybe someone that has like autism, they might not even have diagnosed autism, and that is why they're having such a hard time connecting. And so just kind of stepping into that curiosity and empathy and giving someone the benefit of the doubt, assuming positive intent. Like I will give my partner 100% credit for that. Like that's something that's been a game changer for me, is assuming positive intent in someone. More than likely they've got their own stuff going on and it's not personal and they're probably dealing with some struggles. It's a matter of like finding kind of compassion for them, but also making a decision for yourself, like is this something that I can live with and accept? If I know to expect for someone to be late all the time, then I no longer have to be offended that it's about me, because I know that it's not, right?
You're so right. And, it is such a key place to get to. It's kind of
Mhm.
like almost, risk versus benefit,
Yeah.
because there are a few friends that I have, and I actually have ADHD, but I am so aware of this time thing because I
Yeah.
know that I do have
Time
all the
blindness.
alarms, yeah, and all that. But I do have a couple friends who are chronically late, and
Mhm.
I have had to come to a place of acceptance on it and
Exactly.
just kind of go, okay, I know this about this person. This person
Mhm.
is not pretending to be anybody that they're not, right? And so
Yeah.
within the parameters of what they're able to offer, because they can't
Yes.
give me something they don't have, right?
Exactly.
So it's
Yes.
like, does this work for me? Does this still work for
Mhm.
me? And
Mhm.
so these are such important questions, and
Sure.
really things to search our own heart and soul over, like, yeah,
Yes.
this is no longer working for me anymore, or yes, it is working. And it's just something I'll have to accept and know, as you said,
Mhm.
the assuming positive intent, just,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, I love all of this so much. What have you found that people have struggled with the most in a sober relationship?
In a sober relationship, well, again, if there's someone that's like relatively early in sobriety, it's just so important to really know who you are, because when we were in active addiction, it's like
Yeah.
we we just we morphed ourselves into all the different personalities to fit in. Of course, you know, the alcohol and the drug use doesn't help with just even brain development. You know, I started drinking and using when I was 12, and I didn't stop until I was turning, you know, 30 at the time. So all those years where I could be getting to know who I am, I just wasn't. I was operating from a child mentality. So again, it's really important to really know who you are and what you truly value, but also, you know, like what kind of like worldviews and essentially baggage you're bringing in to any relationship from when you were growing up. Because what I struggled with that really affected my ability to find a healthy relationship is that not only did I have, you know, those abandonment issues from my father being an alcoholic and not being in my life, but also my grandfather, there was, you know, I was given conditional love. And so it was like, if you do everything that, you know, that I expect you to do, then I'm going to love you and you're the best and you're my world. But if you screw up, you will be ignored. You will have to walk on eggshells. And so if you don't have that awareness, as I did not, then those are the type of people that I was looking for, because it was unresolved. And so it's so important to understand that this is what happened to me, and really find like a resolution. And that would be to, you know, like look like, what does a healthy relationship look like, and how do we get into those healthy relationships with people, so that we can learn that, you know what, it's not conditional love, like it should be unconditional. And really focusing on who are the people that give me that unconditional love, because that's really where it's at. You know, if I had to choose between being with someone that makes me feel bad about myself after I walk away, as opposed to someone that builds me up, you know, I'm going to put my time into spending time with someone that builds me up, and that's someone who supports me. So that was a really big part of just understanding, connecting those dots, and also kind of watching out for like projecting. Like my mom projected things onto me that I projected onto other people. That perfectionism, that, you know, like silly things like people that don't use a fork or a knife at the table, they're uneducated, or they're, you know, lower than me. Like that, like when I look at it, I'm just like, that is insane. And I judged people based on that, because she projected it onto me, and then I projected it onto other people, and that prevented me from giving people a chance, because they chose not to use a knife at the table, like when they're having dinner. Like, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's just like, so being aware of like what our parents projected onto us, and how is that serving me today? Like, is that closing me off from, you know, wonderful relationships? Because someone's table manners have nothing to do with what kind of a person they are, and really, who gives a crap, right? Unless you're like eating with your hands and you're like stuffing food into your face, then it might be a little concerned. But, you know, it's just like having that clarity of like, oh, you know,
Yeah.
you know, that's not a healthy like worldview that I want to keep. Like,
Right.
I know myself, and that is not something that I value today. Like, I just don't care. What I
Right.
care about is kindness, right? I care
Right.
about kindness. I care about how the person treats other people.
Yeah.
And so that's me, and that's my mom, right? That's me, and that's my grandpa. He's over there. Like, I'm a separate person. I am my own person. And this is how I want to live my life. These are my boundaries. Like, these are my needs. These are my non-negotiables. Developing, you know, kind of like just really knowing who you are inside and out.
Mm-hmm. A much better quote unquote list than, you know, back in the day when I was in college, and I had a religious background. So we all had these lists, right? I mean, what a joke. Like, looking back on it now, I'm like, it was like, you know, basically tall, dark, and handsome was the list. I mean, it had
Oh no.
yes, girl. I mean, yeah, it's a miracle. I mean, it's a miracle. I found who I found, who was
For
well
sure.
suited for me and me for him, and was willing to, you know, grow with me over time and put up with a
Yeah.
lot of stuff. So yeah, this is all, it's incredibly fascinating. And, you know, I love the fact that you had yourself kind of wait for 18 months to just kind of not date and just take like the watcher's kind of viewpoint, let me just watch what's happening here. Let me learn about this. Let me, figure out more about myself. What are really the needs that I need in relationships? And I think a common thing is too, and it sounds like you have moved past this, where it's like, what is my responsibility and what is another person's responsibility?
100%.
Yeah. Can you speak to that at all?
Oh yes, I can absolutely speak to that. And also I want to just make a small correction that in the 18 months that I was establishing my sobriety foundation, I was not doing anything with that time to prepare myself for getting out there to date. And I think that that's where the trouble lays, that I didn't do any of that work. And I was just like, I'm feeling lonely, so I'm just gonna go out there because that's what everybody else is doing. So I wish that I used that time to do this deep inner work, but in fact I did not. And so that's what happened to me. So only after taking a step back, getting beat up in the battlefield, so to speak, that's when I realized the work that truly needs to be done. So, a year, a little over a year, okay, but it's like, what are you doing with that time, right? So it's important to establish that foundation, but the next step would be to really dig into, the relationship piece and like, okay, do I have some things that I got to work on before I go out there and start meeting people? Because there might be, maybe not.
So excellent. So
Yeah.
excellent. I am struck with, again, the cohesiveness to just every relationship, because,
Hmm.
I mean, when I first got sober, so many things that you said just resonated with me. I mean, I didn't know who I was. So I
Hmm.
wouldn't have known what I needed, what I wanted,
Exactly.
what I was projecting. And all of that comes right over time and
Yes.
over work and over being honest with really
Mhm.
what's going on inside of us. And, one example that I'll give you, which I think is just fascinating and interesting, is like, when we tell me, I guess my question is this: tell me if this sounds healthy or unhealthy to you. And it sounds like a loaded question. I'm okay if you say unhealthy.
Let's
I'm
go for
totally
it.
okay with it,
Go
because
for it.
I just want to. So I had a lot of emotional baggage with my dad. I had abandonment issues, all of that. And what's so interesting is, once I admitted that to myself, discovered it, admitted it, surrendered to it even,
Mhm.
and also didn't shame myself for, because sometimes I was tempted to go like, what's wrong with me? I'm so weak or whatever.
Yeah.
Once I just, let that go and stopped believing a lot of the false narratives about that,
Mhm.
now I look at my dad and I'm like, gosh, I'm so blessed that he's still alive. I'm
Mhm.
46 years old. Like, I have a lot of friends who do not have parents. And,
Mhm.
I feel such a connection to my parents, both of them, but just because they're still alive, they
Mhm.
did the best they could. I know
Absolutely.
that.
Yes.
And I now look at my dad and his characteristics that annoyed me so much earlier in our relationship, I find them endearing. And I'm like, just blessed by him. I'm like, gosh, he's so cute. And
Mhm.
he knows what he wants and he doesn't compromise. Like, there are such great
Yeah.
things. And I could never see that before. And I think that it really does come from going through that process of healing, whether that looks like 12-step fellowship, like is where I primarily, put most of my time and attention, but also, therapy or whatever else. And
Sure.
so can you tell me real quick about not real quick, sorry, I don't know why I said that. Can you tell me about coaching? Well, first of all, I'll ask you if that sounds healthy or not. And then I would love to hear about coaching, because people can hire you to coach them through some relationships.
Yeah. A couple of things. So I didn't answer your previous question about what I was responsible for. So I want to address that. I went off on a tangent, so I want to address your question to me. So again, just going back and doing the work allowed me to step out of the victim. Like, this bad thing happened to me and all the things he did and said and all right? It allowed me to see what I was responsible for, and what I had to take responsibility for was that I hadn't done that work. I didn't know what I needed. I didn't know what my values were. I didn't know how to set boundaries. And so because they didn't know what my boundaries were, they kept crossing them. And it was just, it's like, if they don't know, they keep doing it, right? And if I don't know what it is, all I feel is just like, oh, this is feeling bad. And I would react, and I would react in one of two ways. The first one, I would explode and get angry. How dare you disrespect me, even though they have no idea. And then the second thing is, fight or flight, freeze, right? Like, I'm just going to pretend like this didn't happen, because I'm so afraid that they're going to, hate me, or they're going to yell at me because of this is what I saw growing up, right? So I had to take responsibility for not having done that work, because ultimately it was all on me. And so I walked myself into those relationships, and it was very empowering to be able to do that, because now I knew exactly what I needed to work on, and I did. And, as soon as I did the work, lo and behold, life changed. What do you know? So, yeah, but it's so beautiful, the fact that you accept your dad today. And again, like, positive intent, like, everyone's doing the best that they can to the best of their ability. Like, nobody wakes up in the morning most of the time. I think with like this deep, like, mission or hatred to like destroy the world or to hurt other people. We're operating within our own, kind of context of what reality is, because my reality is different than your reality. And so it's a beautiful thing that you see, your dad for who he is. And it sounds like you've forgiven him. And, it's like, it's just love. That is unconditional love, when we can love someone anyway, despite their flaws or whatever happened, because a lack of forgiveness just keeps us miserable. And so that is, I just think it's a beautiful, very healthy thing to be able to just acknowledge that and love him unconditionally, because, our time here is limited. We don't know how long we have on this earth. So with your question around coaching, so one of the more kind of common things that I help my clients with is, again, I've worked with quite a few married ladies that have found themselves in these unhealthy relationship dynamics where conflict is coming up, where, they're afraid to speak up for themselves. They're walking on eggshells. They're unhappy. Their boundaries are being crossed. And so, and again, what's coming up is that they don't know what their boundaries are. And so the boundaries continue to get crossed. And when conflict comes up, it's around things that weren't discussed before they got into the relationship and got married. So that makes it very difficult. Yeah, because you're already locked in, and, it's like, so what I do is just do some work around, like, what is their responsibility? If they need to discuss a very difficult, touchy subject, it is so important to not come across as criticizing the other person's character, because the minute that is what the other person feels, the conversation is over. You might as well just walk away. Yeah. It's not going to end well. 99% of the time, it won't end well. So the Gottmans call that antidote to criticism a gentle startup. How do we bring up a touchy subject without triggering someone to become defensive? Because again, game over at that point. You might as well walk away. So how can we effectively communicate what it is that we're seeing from a neutral stance and what we're needing? And then how can we ask them to change gently that behavior without making it sound like an ultimatum or threat? Because that also doesn't work very well. Yeah, and what I did was I put together a tool that worked for me. I essentially used kind of the different components in the tool, which is called like a relationship audit, where again, we just look at our influential kind of like caregivers that we saw or grew up with and what they modeled to us. And then we do kind of an inventory of our prior relationships and look for patterns, so relationship dynamics that maybe were common that came up. Maybe like, are you always blaming someone, or is someone always too needy? Things of that nature. And then how does that show up in relationships today? Because there's definitely a big difference between coaching and therapy, right? Therapy is like, let's look at those childhood issues and let's try to fix what didn't take place and what not. But with coaching, it's like, yes, things happened in the past, but how is that affecting you in the future today? And so what we're going to do is we're going to address those behaviors that are happening today. Does that make sense? That's kind of the difference, is here and now versus like, let's really dive in, what happened, like.
Yes.
And then the other part is, again, just helping. I primarily work with women, but I do have male clients. With male clients and just in general, I work a lot around like dating and just how do you effectively, market yourself, really having clarity around what you need and want, what you're not willing to stand for before you put yourself out there. And then just having a plan, how do you screen people to make sure that you're not spending hours and hundreds of dollars on dinners with someone that really shouldn't have passed the sniff test to begin with, right? So a lot of it is just around dating. I would say like communication is number one, and then two is like a dating plan and a strategy, and how to get in front of the best people that are good for you, and then the people that aren't a good fit, how can we just like weed them out right away so that we don't go down that road of investing, right, emotionally and financially.
Yulia, this is mind-blowing. You are doing amazing work.
Thank you. I really love it.
Gosh, you're definitely beyond qualified and cut out for it. This is just incredible. I just feel fire hosed in a totally good way, like all good things. And as we wrap up, I got one last question that I'm like, I got to know this. You
Yes.
mentioned just now the dinner scenario where it's like, wait a minute, that person actually probably shouldn't have even passed
Nope.
the very beginning stages. If you find yourself in that situation, what do you do? Like, how do you get out of it politely before it goes to the next step and you're like, oh shoot, well, I felt that red flag at that dinner, or, I kind of knew, but I didn't want to deal with it. So now here I am at the next date or whatever.
Yeah, so again, my work is really around preventing that from happening as much as possible so that you don't even get to that point. That's why one of the strategies that I use is just like, first of all, not messaging for weeks on end with someone, get them on the phone, preferably FaceTime, like right away. And just have a casual conversation. Can they string a sentence together? Because they could have paid, some company to write their dating profile. Is there like an attraction, some kind of a, interest there? From then on, you'll go to like a light coffee, 15 minutes again, so you can get in and get out. If they're terrible, like they're just not who they said they were, somehow, it's a 15-minute coffee, right? And then after the coffee, usually you can kind of tell if, like, okay, yeah, I wouldn't mind spending an hour or maybe 2 hours in front of their face at a dinner or something like that. But, honesty is the best policy. It is really important to be able to just tell the truth and what's coming up for you in the moment. And so people really appreciate honesty, and the whole ghosting culture just really kills me because it doesn't create win-wins for anybody. You end up feeling bad for ghosting them. The other person feels rejected and hurt, and it just perpetuates that bad behavior. So, if you're ever in a situation where you're not feeling comfortable, you're just not feeling it, you can always just say, hey, it's been really nice getting to know you. I'm kind of feeling like this isn't a match. And so, I feel a little under the weather, or just, I just thank you so much for this, for giving me an opportunity to get to know you, but I think I'm going to get going, just express kindness and gratitude, and then just be honest with like what you're feeling, the emotions, because they can't say, well, that you don't feel that way, or
Right.
if you said someone, told someone, well, you're kind of boring. It's like, well, I'm not boring, right? So kindness lead with honesty and kindness and just kind of what you're feeling in the moment. So you should never have to be feeling like you're stuck or be in a hostage situation with someone. Like you have the right to exit that situation and you don't owe anyone an explanation. So it's just really important to be able to stand in your worth in those situations.
Stand in your worth. Those are words to live by. And really, it's true because it's like, yeah, it's not personal when you
No.
take that honest, stance of just like, you know what? I'm just not feeling we're a good fit. And I'm
Yeah,
so thankful for your time. But
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. And you walk away feeling good about it, and they do too because they weren't ghosted or rejected, right?
Yeah. And you're not stringing them along for 6 months,
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
knowing the whole time there's no connection.
It creates bad energy, and I firmly believe in karma. What goes around comes around, because that's been my experience. So if you're gonna ghost someone, guess what? It's coming your way, and it's gonna hurt.
Yeah. And then you've set this track record, right? And so the next time that comes along, you're just going to ghost them again because it's just the easier, softer
Right.
way, right?
And then you're interviewing for a job, and they turn out to be your boss, right? Like that's
right.
right.
That's so true. Yeah.
Like it's a thing. It's a thing. It's happened before. So
Oh my gosh.
leave people in a good place, a little bit better than when you met them. That's my kind of like motto to live by.
It's a good one. And so are you, Yulia. You're doing incredible work.
Oh, thank
And
you.
I'm beyond pumped to share this episode. And I'm wondering, where can people find you to get in contact with you?
Yes. So I do have a website, and it's just www.lovebeyondrecovery.com. I have my relationship audit workbook that you can download, and you can work through that. And if you're wanting to do that deeper work, I created that for ladies and even gentlemen, if they so choose to go through, if they're struggling or wanting to get some guidance. And I do offer a free 15-minute breakthrough session to just chat and see if there's an alignment, with those that might need some guidance and they want to get an idea or sense for my coaching. We can have that conversation and see if it makes sense for us to work together. I do have an Instagram, and I will be honest, there are crickets chirping on that Instagram, but that is about to change. I've been a little bit slow to be on social media, but I am on Instagram, and that's also at Love Beyond Recovery. So I would say my website's probably the best first step. But yes, watch the social media channels. I do have a free Facebook community as well, and that is for ladies. I'm going to be launching that in probably before the end of April. So I will have a link for that on my website within the next 30 days. And so that's going to be a free supportive community for ladies to come and, support each other. I'll be doing some Facebook lives in there and just answering some questions and doing trainings around communication and boundaries. So watch out for that this coming month.
Amazing. And on that note, know your worth, I think, is a great thing to end on. And
Definitely.
Yulia, thank you so much for coming on today. You are a merchant of hope. So thank you.
Warms my heart. Thank you so much. I can't believe we took over an hour to have this interview, and I'm just really blessed. Thank you, Amy. You're the best.
Oh, thank you so much. All right, listeners. So be kind, rewind. Thank you for the honor of your time. Take what you like and leave the rest behind.
Thank you so much for listening to Eternally Amy, a mum of eight's journey from jail to joy. Amy Liz Harrison is a best-selling author, speaker, 12-step coach, meditation teacher, and recovery advocate. To find out more, please visit amylizharrison.com. You can keep up with Amy on all platforms by following @AmyLizHarrison. Please subscribe and review this podcast. It means so much to us if you do.